Jamie, is your mic on?
Check 1, 2.
Check 1, 2.
I got late, but I'm not late. What? I'm not late.
Now we're trying at 9.
Did you print it? This is what
So really, how old are you?
How old am I?
we'll be 58.
58? So what's your secret to keeping all that hair? What's your...
I don't. I have a big old bald spot.
You do?
I didn't. You know how I learned I had it? But they'll be showing the planning commission, and there was a TV or a camera up there, and I went, "What the hell am I going home?" My wife, and she, "What did you tell me?" Didn't seem important. But 58. Yeah, I'll be 59 in like tomorrow. No, maybe next day.
Oh, happy birthday.
What's the date today?
Just grab the
19th.
19th.
21st.
Happy early birthday.
Yeah,
And the
can you
birthday
get us out
on
of here
Friday?
early?
Bringing it in on a Friday?
That's pretty
Yeah, I
good.
have something for you. I'll email it to you also. Okay, what do you take?
Always have to remember myself.
So you don't shave it by choice, huh? You shave it because you lose that?
I'll never forget my sister, who's never shy, pointing those kind of things out. Goes, "You're going bald." No, I wasn't. I was like, mid-30s or something like that.
Set to go?
I didn't believe her.
Oh, you're right.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Design Review Committee. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Okay, Member Kiesel,
Here?
Member Cormain,
Here.
Member Tomasello,
Here.
Vice Chair Groudon,
Here.
and Chair Hanselman.
Here. Public communications, this is a time that we set aside for public communications to talk about any item that is not on tonight's agenda. Mr. Clerk, is there anyone who would like to speak?
I've received no speaker cards for public communications.
Okay, then if there's no speakers, we'll move on to consent item number 1. We have approval of minutes for August 17th. Are there any corrections that any members would like to make? If not, we need a motion to approve in a second.
I'll move to approve the August 17th and August 31st minutes.
Can we do both at the same time?
Can.
Okay, no corrections on the 31st either for anyone. Okay. And then we need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's been seconded. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Okay, on the motion, Member Kiesel,
Yes.
Member Cormain,
Yes.
Member Tomasello,
Yes.
Vice Chair Groudon,
Yes.
and Chair Hanselman.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries.
Okay, we're going to move on to formal item number 2, which is project 15409. Can we please have a staff presentation?
Yes, thank you. The only item on the agenda tonight is a design review and plan development permit for the Colony Park Phase 2. Next slide. The subject site's located in the Thale community at the southwestern intersection of Thale and Goodman Avenue. The subject site is currently vacant. The structures on site have been demolished. And this is adjacent to the Colony Park 1 multifamily development. So the proposed project is part of the second phase of that multifamily development. Next slide. Here are some photos of the existing surrounding character. We have single-family homes across the street from on Thill, and condos across the street on Goodman, along with multifamily across the street on Sullivan Street, and then a photo of the subject site at the corner of Goodman and Thill. Next slide. The proposed project consists of 71 apartments. 5% of them will be affordable, 4 units, with 119 parking spaces that would be between 2-car garages and also surface parking spaces that are uncovered. There's landscaping throughout the site proposed, along with connectivity for vehicle access between the subject site and also the Colony Park adjacent site. This is an overview of the project, and next we have the applicant if they'd like to come up and talk about the project in further detail.
And if I could just remind the applicants to speak very clearly into the microphone so the audio is picked up.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the committee. My name is Alan Chuang. I'm with Raintree Partners. I am with the development group Raintree Partners, and I do have my colleague here, Winnie, today. She's with TCA Architects, so she'll be going through a presentation. But just before we get started, maybe a quick background of Raintree Partners. We're a firm that focuses on creating and preserving housing in the state of California. We are long-term holders. We purchased the Colony Park apartments back in 2012. Since then, we've gone through quite an effort to preserve the community by addressing deferred maintenance items. And the presentation will kind of show what we've done, kind of brief snippets of that, but mainly upgrading paint, addressing wood rot, addressing waterproofing issues in the roof. And we're very excited about this opportunity to add to that community. So, Winnie, you want to go ahead?
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the committee and to everyone for giving us this opportunity to review our project. We really take the neighborhood context of Ventura, of Colony Park community, as well as adjacent neighborhood, the Cape, into consideration when we're designing this project. If we could get the next slide. So one of the things that we really wanted to be sensitive to and make sure that our buildings are appropriate is the building scale and size and how it's sited on the project. So from the next 3 renderings you're gonna see, since we are facing Thiel, Sullivan, and Goodman, that we want to make sure that we have the appropriate architecture that has the street presence, that has ground floor activation with the patios and the sidewalk connection to really make it a active, vibrant community. So this is a view from Goodman Street as one of the buildings. And if we can get the next slide, please. And here's a view from the corner of Thiel and Goodman. As you can see, we really wanted to define the corner at this intersection to have the building front door facing the street and the public to really make it a kind of a safe and kind of active neighborhood, and what we see as completing kind of the jigsaw puzzle within the neighborhood fabric between the Colony Park community and the adjacent residential area. Next slide, please. And here's another view from Sullivan Street, which, as you can see, has one of the vehicular entrances into it, that we do have the units facing the street and the garages and the internal parking kind of more internal to the site. Next slide. So one of the things that when we're looking at the site configuration, we want to make sure that the 71 units is housed in 6 3-story apartment buildings with garages on the ground level that's tucked under. So as you can see, we have ground level units that's facing all the streets with the garages that's internal to the circulation. And then from that, we have the vehicular can come in on Goodman Street for ease of access, as well as Sullivan, and that we also have an internal connection to the existing Colony Park that is page left to the site. With this, we're able to create some internal pedestrian connection that's within the our site and the adjacent site to provide areas for the residents to be able to walk over to the existing open spaces, some turf areas for pet relief or just for kids to play around, as well as the existing amenities, the pools that that the residents can use. Again, I think one of the things that we were really mindful is to make sure our buildings are facing the street and not turning our backs. So all the units have patios that have direct access. They're secured, but that could prove convenience for them to walk the dog or just go across the street and to just really have a active pedestrian connection. Next slide. This is a plan of the upper levels, which we do have units on all four sides. So architecturally, they have views all to the, and architecture on all four sides of the buildings. Next. So we have 6 buildings. They're all related and with similar architecture that we wanted to blend in and be complementary to the existing Colony Park and the Cape as well. So a lot of the materials in the palette drew a lot of inspiration from the vernacular. As you can see, we try to have the buildings, the 3-story buildings, have enough articulation with the roof forms and the change of materials with emphasis on where the building entry may be and to kind of draw your focal point with trellises and the patios. So what we think it could really tie the entire community together with the elevations in the building forms. Next slide.
I'll reload it.
We're almost through. Yeah. Next, I think this is next slide. So again, we do have 3 different building types based on kind of the site constraint. Again, they're all similar. As you can see, they're architecture on all 4 sides with the main entry. On the top left is where we have the street view, and then tucked in the internal, we do have the garages with the units above. Next. This is the one that is closest to the Thiel Street, and so again, this is a slightly smaller building, but again, we were trying to make sure that it's all coherent and consistent within the neighborhood and within the overall community. These are the color and material palette that we are intending on using. Again, drawing some of the color palette that is consistent with the existing neighborhood and really have a very kind of crisp and calm building palette to go with the landscaping. This is showing the completed preservation on the Colony Park 1 that Alan alluded to. So as you can see, there's a lot of the similarities in terms of the color and materials. Next. And this is a illustrative landscape plan where we're showing how we are intending to landscape throughout the site. We will have trees and hedges that shield some of the internal drive aisles that you can't see from the street, as well as connections, as you can see, that's going page down where it goes to, there's a paseo with a meandering path that takes you to the open space and turf area that could be shared among the extended community. And also another enhanced connection that is page right that also goes to the existing amenity of Colonnade Park 1. And then the other thing to note is we do have centralized trash and mail that's within the parking internal, so it is convenient for all the residents. That's it. Any questions?
Do any of the committee members have questions?
And we got a final slide that we'll close out.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to close out, staff doesn't have a ton of comments or questions for the DRC, so discuss as you guys see fit, but also the only question that we had in there were regarding the removal of the parking spaces, which they just indicated, so.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, what did you say at the end of your last sentence?
The parking spaces at the end, which were shown in the staff report, there are 3 different parking spaces that are along Goodman and Thill that kind of interrupt the, yeah, here on this slide you can generally see it, but there are parking spaces that are at the end of the buildings and along the street that during the review staff had requested to remove them, and if the DRC agrees to have those removed and include additional landscaping in those areas, since the project is overparked. So removing 3 spaces wouldn't impact their parking requirement.
Which is your one question.
That's the only question that we had.
But they are still in?
No.
They've already been removed. Okay.
Right, as of right now, the applicant just presented an alternative.
What's the total number of overpark?
Oof. Overparked by 25.
Okay. Is that unusual for us to see projects with overparking?
Generally, yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, can we ask questions?
Okay, shoot.
Is your water sheet flowing off the roof? Do you have gutters and downspouts?
We do have downspouts.
You didn't show them on the drawings, is that correct, or am I missing
They
it?
are indicated in dotted.
Indicated in the dots, but not drawn on the drawings?
They
not drawn
are-
on the three-dimensional drawings?
They're not, if we go to one of the elevations, sorry, and you see some of those dotted lines, that's where we're intending the
Okay.
downspouts to be.
All right, but not on your renderings, and not actually drawn what they will look like?
No.
Because I doubt you're going to have dots, unless those are rain chains. No, I'm a serious question.
No, I think those are what were intended, where the downspouts would be, and we would tie it in with architecture.
And, okay, so then the other thing I have that I don't see on the drawings, other than the plan, I do see them on the plans, are your lights. Bollards are assumed to be in the planters and such. Do you have lights on the buildings themselves, and are they on the drawings?
Most of the lights would be from the patios. I don't think we will have any exterior lighting.
Okay, so when they're in your lighting drawing, you kind of have them like shining out, but that's not necessarily representative. That's just your symbol for them.
Correct.
For me, it would have helped us have all that on the drawings, just so we could see it, and because those will be on the project. Bikes, you have a bike symbol, but the bikes are in the garages only? Or is there a public biking?
So we have 2. We do have in the plan, We have, maybe the landscape plan may show that, we do have bike parking kind of page on the left where we do have, I think they had a call out there for some of the short-term bike parking.
Where is there? Do we have a pointer?
I think
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so you do have like
We do have,
quote
so
unquote public biking or whatever.
yes.
Guest biking or
guest
whatever.
bike parking.
Your windows they're called out as vinyl. What kind of vinyl? Is it just do you have a actual vinyl window you'll be using in that?
Manufacturer? We don't have one of them selected, but from a lot of the projects that we've worked on, I think there's quite a few manufacturers that we would go with.
Okay. I'm good, I think, for now. I might have another one.
I have some questions, please.
Sure.
Can you clarify, so the typical building has a cluster of 12 units?
Correct.
How is the configuration of the parking garages for those units?
So if we can go to a plan, please.
I see two of them are accessible directly from the bottom units. How do you assign or configure the other parking for those units upstairs?
So yes, the ones that are directly connected are the ones that are assigned or accessible for those on the ground level units. The other ones would be, I think it will just through with management how they want to select their parking, but what would happen is they would park into the garage and then go through the entrance. You see the two stairs on each of the building. That would be the entry to go up to the upper level to get to their units.
So the parking in the garage is provided meets the needs of the units? Or is that excess needs to go out into the parking lot? I mean, are you assigning like one bedroom gets one garage with a single?
It's going to be I think a combination of both, and maybe that's something.
Yeah, it's something that management will end up deciding, property management. But if I'm hearing you correctly, every unit will at least have one parking, garage parking.
Okay. Looking at the utility plan, can you describe to me a bit about the it looks like a retention water system?
The stormwater?
Yeah, under the parking. What does that consist of?
Unfortunately, we don't have our civil engineer here, so I'm going to try my best. But the way we're treating stormwater is based off of the feedback that we got back from the city. I understand that bioswales were required. We had initially proposed like a modular wetland system. So from my understanding, it goes to the bioswales, to the retention area, and then out to the storm drain. Unfortunately, I'm not the expert on that, but I'm happy to get your information, get your question. I can
I was
ask
just
our
interested
civil.
because
Yeah.
there's plantings around it, and with those structures underground, if it would interfere with the way the trees could grow. Because I have no sense of the depth that you're making these structures in the parking lot. So, yeah, I mean, it's...
Yeah, I think it's something that the civil and landscape have worked out kind of preliminary in terms of where these areas would go. And so the planting is where those bioswale areas will have, they're working it out to make sure that that's part of the stormwater retention.
C1, oh, let's see one. Okay. So right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last question I have is, are there trees on the site right now and are you retaining any of them?
The actual site, no, there are no more trees.
No trees.
We went through an arborist, went through the city to make sure that they were okay to remove.
There was an arborist report that was submitted as part of the application, indicating that the trees were dead and or dying, and therefore could be removed.
That's it for me.
I've got a few questions. I noticed there were quite a bit of there's quite a bit of utilities kind of within the proposed landscaping areas. One question I had was whether any consideration had been given to going all electric.
I think that is something we are evaluating to see if it's viable to do all electric. I mean, I think we're figuring out in terms of some of the condensers for the units and all that we want to just make sure we kind of keep that in mind. But that is definitely something that I think we would take into consideration.
Okay. And then subsequently, screening around gas meters, the condenser units on the ground floor, things like that. How have you kind of addressed, keeping it tidy and putting plants in the ground in those areas?
Yeah, I think the current protocol is to screen them with brush and shrubs and planting, similar to how it's screened throughout the rest of the community in that neighborhood. So we plan to do the same.
Okay. I didn't notice any fencing shown on the site plan, on any of the plans. Are there any plans to fence off certain areas, or is this generally kind of open?
Generally open. It stays consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. Obviously, we have controlled access in the amenity areas, but as far as access to the property, it's going to be the same with Colony Park, and then I think the other neighborhoods around too.
Okay. What was the plaster finish that's assumed? I saw the colors, but I didn't see a finish listed.
I think typically we do the somewhere between 2030 or 2030 or 16. Something that's not extremely rough, but depending on, I think, on the ground levels, we definitely try to make it a little more enhanced. But further up, it's just our typical stucco finish or plaster finish that we do.
Okay. The amenities, I'm somewhat less familiar with the how the surrounding neighborhood and what amenities there is, and how this project kind of was originally planned to be part of that. Can you sort of explain what's there? I mean, just looking at the site plan alone, it looks like there's a definitive lack of open space and amenities, but can you talk about sort of how those interrelate?
Yeah, so
there was a slide. Can we pull up this original slide where maybe it was in the staff report that has the the bigger context? Yeah, I think the one before.
And just for context, when we purchased Colony Park 1 10 years ago, this site right here that we're talking about today was not available. So we obviously saw it fit once it was available for us to ultimately add to our community here. So there are two amenity, call it spaces, here at Colony Park 1. Obviously the one with the pool deck you could see on the screen, but there's another one that's just planned south of the image shown. So our plan really is to spend our funds to really upgrade these existing amenity spaces with upgraded FF&E for the fitness, the club rooms, and the pool decks.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, I know Winnie had touched base on it, but currently you could see that there's an underutilized open space area just on the corner of Thiel right there. And we saw that as a great opportunity for us to connect both the communities with a meandering path and really adding to the landscaping there as well to have folks utilize it as a pet relief area, or if, if that's not desirable, to have families utilize it for a kid play area.
Okay. And then there is that connection just on the south side of the plan, southeast corner of this plan. That connection there, and I noticed those 3 parking spaces. Those are the 3 parking spaces that I was assuming staff was talking about when looking at this. Is that, or what's sort of the intention for those parking spaces? Would those be guest? Are those intended for residents? Would there be any flexibility to create a little bit more of a stronger connection at that corner?
So the 3 stalls that staff was mentioning was actually, they're actually no longer shown on this because we did add landscaping to those, but that was actually, 2 of those stalls were along Thiel Street between buildings 1 and 6, if I'm reading that correctly, and then another one at the corner of Goodman right there in building 1. So the 3 that are down below, I think that's really dedicated to visitor or for residential use. To enhance that more, we could obviously take a look at it, but the thought for placing that pedestrian connection, that location, was obviously direct access to the leasing office, the clubhouse, and the pool. That's not shown on this page, unfortunately, but that is the reason why it's there.
Okay. Kind of a minor question, but your trash enclosures, I wasn't sure if they need to be accessible. They didn't quite look it. Do you know if they did need to be accessible, how you would accommodate that with this parking configuration?
Yes, they will be accessible, and what we've worked with the team is that make sure they're on an accessible path.
Okay. All right, I think that's all my questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack, you have any questions?
Yeah, hi, I have a few questions here for the applicant. I take it the landscape architect is not here today, right? Okay. So I'll save some of those questions and maybe just have 2 comments.
Can you ask him anyways?
Oh, okay.
I want to hear what you say.
Oh, okay. Going back to Tony's kind of where he's addressing how this project connects to the greater development. I guess because it's grandfathered in because it was part of the greater development before?
No, this this site was not necessarily intended for this phase 2 of Colony Park. There have been other projects proposed here over the course of 10 years. So this is, as they mentioned, purchase this property to extend into it. So this is separate almost from the existing development.
Then again, you said this is overparked by how many again?
I believe 25 spaces.
25 spaces. As the applicant, did you guys consider perhaps introducing more open space, common areas, I should say, as opposed to just like green areas? Maybe and potentially, I always look at these apartment complexes, and I've worked on many of these, and I always kind of lament the lost opportunity for introducing some kind of green area into the center, because right now as it's looking, obviously everything is kind of pushed to the front, which is good. You want your buildings to be on the streets as much as you can, but there's that idea of back of house, how to kind of make it look and feel less like a back of house just for leftover parking. Was there any consideration for kind of introducing open space potentially in the central area, like maybe make more of a courtyard type of experience?
Yeah, and I know we had mentioned that this is overparked. It is overparked per code, but ultimately, we are long-term holders, and we want to be mindful of those that stay at this community. So we do want to be able to provide still parking, and although we'd like to think that few folks are using less and less cars these days, especially in this location, we still believe that there is still a demand for parking. So, we're still of the mindset from an operations standpoint that we're parked efficiently right now for 71 units. So we did look at adding green space, but we thought ultimately that it would probably benefit our residents a bit more with some excess parking and then addressing some of the other open spaces that we have at existing Colony Park 1 and some of the connection points we're looking at today, and just kind of spending some more time and effort on that.
And another question, solar-wise, they're required to do solar too, right, per the code?
It will
For
be.
a city, yeah, right. Was there any consideration for maybe making the central area to maximize your solar generation, maybe covered parking there with solar panels as opposed to roofs? Sometimes you don't always have the greatest aspect on any one building.
Right. And I think that's something that we're still working on to understand what we need to do to meet code. And unfortunately, we don't have that shown right now, but that's something that we are looking into.
Okay. And as far as the central gathering area that you're making a connection to the rest of the development and the open spaces, I know was there anything else programmed there? You mentioned dogs. Was there anything else?
Yeah, it's something we could definitely add to. I think we kind of wanted to leave that flexible for the time being. Right now we have just kind of a meandering path down there, but really once we have an understanding of what our residents really want to use that space for, I think we could probably be flexible and add to that.
Have you done any kind of survey with the residents in the area, what that would be, or what their desires might be for that?
Not at this point, but something we'll definitely do.
Perhaps there might be some people in the audience today who might have some suggestions on that. Oh, okay, great. The other question, these are existing trees to remain, I take it, in that particular park?
I believe so.
Okay, I do have some questions. Tony did mention about screening of some of the AC units. Sometimes as a landscape architect, we struggle to screen these things adequately because we don't have enough room. It looks like this one pathway is very close. Is there maybe an opportunity to relocate that? Is there a reason why that pathway is so close to that building 4 down in the right-hand corner? What happens, the pathway is like running right along the AC units in the building.
That's a path of travel to one of the...
I think it's a path of travel, and then because we also have a setback, that because of the site geometry, as you can see, there's that dotted line. Based on the setback, we were trying to just kind of hug it tight to the building to not encroach in it.
So that dotted line, but it looks like there might be enough room to maybe move it to the right a little bit towards the setback.
Set it out and then use shrubs to cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was basically wondering if there was a reason why it was so tight there.
Yeah, something we could bring up with the landscape architect.
And then on the patio sizes, how did you guys go about determining what is the adequate private patio size for these units? And is this in keeping in character with the rest of the neighborhood, the rest of the development? Are they bigger, smaller, or and how are those programmed for the users?
I think when we worked with the landscape architect, we really wanted to make sure that, they're sized appropriately where, you do have your circulation, also able to put some furniture out there so that you can use it as a usable space. So really it's based on the size the constraints that we have dimensionally, and then that you see some of them, at least they might be a little smaller just because of the path and all that, but for the most part that we want to make sure that there's enough room that you have the circulation to go out, and then you can still also put a chair, a table, or something out there.
Yeah, I can see that. And was there any consideration also for enhanced paving? Is that something you guys are going to look at down the road, or is it just going to be all AC and some concrete here and there for like the trash?
I know we have enhanced paving at that connection, but we don't have plans for any other enhanced paving.
I'm sorry?
The pedestrian connection has enhanced paving, but no other plans for enhanced paving elsewhere.
For the vehicular areas there, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, going into your, now I have some more questions considering like the trees. I noticed on the landscape plan, there's a few trees and then a few shrubs that were moderate water use. And did you guys consider just going all low water at any point in time? Or like what was driving this particular plant palette and this approach to the planting, and how is it relating to the architecture? Did you talk with the landscape architect about what was his kind of general concept to the design?
That's probably, I probably wouldn't do it justice, so I'd probably have him relay that information. I'm happy to take down your information and your questions and have him answer that appropriately. I just don't want to butcher what would be a great response from him.
Okay, I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Tony, you have more questions?
I do.
Please.
I think staff addressed it, and you've already addressed it, and maybe committee member Cormain did too. But what are the unit makeups from? Are they all single story? I don't see any internal stairs. Are they all?
They're all stacked flats.
Stacked flats. Okay.
Correct.
So there's a few in the parking that actually they have 2 parking spaces come in from the bottom. So that'll be arranged with however you work it later. So almost there is some access from a garage, but most of the accesses are from the vertical circulation stairs.
Correct.
Okay, I get it now. And our 3rd and 2nd level actually
They're the same.
similar. Okay. All right, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, then I have some brief questions. I may have missed it, but what is the percentage of landscaping on this project?
The softscape versus the hardscape? We may have to confirm that with, we don't know off the top of our head.
Okay. Window recess. How many inches are your windows recessed?
Typically, we would just recess it with a 2, when you have a 2x6 with a 2x4, and so you just have kind of the framing, the lumber difference for your recess.
So is that a flush mount to the stucco, or, I mean, are we looking at 1 inch, 2 inch, 6 inches?
It's probably 2 inches.
Okay. And materials for the gutters and downspouts?
That we have not settled on a specific material, but assume it's something that would be cost effective and it looks good with the building.
Okay. Railing material?
Railing would be metal.
Aluminum, steel, copper?
Again, I think that's something we'll kind of consider when we kind of go through the kind of the valuation of the building. But on our typical projects, I think it depends on just the kind of the construction or the product. A lot of times it is just could be aluminum or some sort of metal.
Yeah, usually, I mean, we've done steel tube. So, yeah, something we typically haven't specified this early on in design.
Garage doors, wood, aluminum?
I think it could be either.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there consideration for charging electric cars?
Yeah, and I think...
Yeah. I think the initial studies is that, yes, we will have enough power from the transformers to be able to have the capacity for some charging, especially since the trend is most people having more and more hybrid or electric cars.
And the goal will be to meet whatever's code required.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I'm going to open questions up to the public. Mr. Clerk, or any members of the public who would wish to speak on this item?
I've received no speaker cards. If anyone would like to speak on this item, you can bring your speaker card forward.
You can do it afterward, yeah.
Yeah, we can have you go ahead and come up and fill out the speaker card after the fact. Sure. You can come right up here and just speak clearly into the microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, sorry, this is a little low. I'm gonna put a... Good evening, everyone. Chris Thorpe, 903 Goodman, with my wife Amanda over there. Just regarding the concept of over-parking, I'd like to address if maybe we could throw up the overall picture of the development showing Phil and Sullivan.
So the purpose of the public comment period is to issue a public comment. So if you have a comment, you can direct that to, but it's not really a back and forth or a dialogue.
Oh, all right. I just wanted a visual representation.
Sure, and I could put that up, but just to be clear.
Okay, great. The concept over parking right now, we're already noticing in Colony Park, there is a lot of overflow from the current Colony Park parking that ends up on Goodman Street, some on Thill Street, and of course on Sullivan. And so basically, I think the goal would be to keep as much parking available in the new development, which I think is what you guys proposed. One other thing I'd like to point out is possibly I see the entrance on Goodman. Is there a possibility that we could address the city and the development partners and talk about maybe, since the main streets of access are going to be Sullivan and Thill, possibly putting a median crossover on Thill, like a left turn median crossover, and making the entrance on Thill, because those are really the most traveled streets, and keeping Goodman, eliminating the high traffic turning on the Goodman and in, which is, to be honest, directly across from us. But that was just, those are my 2 points. Just, I think we need as much parking in the units as possible, and also just the idea of possibly putting the entrance on Thill with a medium crossover. I don't really know how these things work, but that's just an idea. Thank you for your time.
Are there any additional speakers at this time? Sure, and I'll just request as well that you do complete a speaker's card. If you haven't yet, you can go ahead and come
up. My name is Nancy McMillan, and I live in the subdivision across the street, okay? And the house, the single dwellings in subdivisions across the street. I would like to know what who you will be marketing to as far as these units, rental units. Will they be the very low income or moderate income, or what income level will be renting these units? Will you have a mixture of different types of people with a certain percentage of units for low income, or will it be totally all low income?
Once again, this is the public comment portion, so if you want to direct your comments to the committee, they can relay if they want to ask the question, that's fine, but this portion's not for a question and answer. It's just a public comment period.
Right, I'm just asking them.
And the committee's heard your question, so and if they want to ask it of the applicant, they will. But again, it's not for an open dialogue exchange.
Okay, because from the original design meeting they had some time ago, it was, I guess, mainly all low income. And I wondered if that had changed.
Sure, and if the committee wants to ask that question of staff, we'll be happy to answer it.
Okay, and I also wanted to know what was the range of the square footage of the units from lowest to highest? Could you tell me that?
I believe the committee's taken note of that question, and I'm sure they'll ask us.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are there any additional speakers at this time? Yes. Sure. We will need to collect those speaker cards, so please do complete those.
Yes, I'm Bob Reifman, and I live on in the Cape area off of Goodman also. And when we saw this project as part of the Colony Park, we were happy because Colony Park has been a good neighbor for us over the years. And but our concern is also that entrance off of Goodman. We were hoping this would be integrated much more with the Colony Park and with the entrance through Sullivan and entering into that and keeping the existing owned condos as a separate neighborhood. But now it's right, the main entrance is coming right in the front there. So like I said, we would much prefer to see something integrated more with the existing. So that's all. Thank you.
Additional speakers? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Design Review Committee members. William Yim. We are living across the street in the single-family neighborhood on Field. Couple of areas I would like to point out for your consideration, committee members. One of which is the impact of future traffic. A lot of the residential, particularly single family, in addition to the apartment complex, residents use Theo and a couple of neighborhoods to the north. And Theo is one of the primary access to the single family neighborhood. And I understand that the access to this complex is on Goodman, and the other access is from the circle, which is part of the apartment complex. It says 71 units. If assuming that you have 2 cars and 3 daily trips, and you can figure out the average daily trips and the impact. In addition to the future development to the west, there is something like a 30-acre potential development, which I'm not too sure when would that be online, and the primary access is on Field again, and that would accumulate the future traffic impact to the areas. As I remember, one of the comments made by the committee members is about the fencing of the development. Right now, there is a concrete wall. And I'm not too sure that has not been addressed whether that concrete wall will still be there or not. And I think the security gate within the proposed project will probably add level of safety to the areas.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
And I'm just asking would that be a time for submitting additional comments since my time is up? Maybe written comments, or maybe I'm asking the design committee to delay the decision so that we can have additional comments to be submitted. Thank you.
Are there any additional speakers at this time? Sure.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Lynch Thorpe. I live at 903 Goodman. This lot has been an eyesore and frankly very dangerous at one point. So this is a huge improvement. And I want to thank the developers for the idea, the concept. It really looks like it fits into the neighborhood. It looks like it will be great. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you guys also for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Shafer. I live on 687 Tarlow. Tarlow is just right off the map a little bit. And I've walked my dog by there every day for 15 years, so I've seen everything that happens around there. And if I don't see it, one of the other dog walkers is going to tell me about it. There's a difference in height on this side over here, because the Colony Park.
And sir, we will need you to speak into the microphone so that your comments can be in the record. It is portable.
Yeah, the Colony Park is it's about half a story down from the level of the 915 Goodman property. And so the people that do live in Colony Park are going to have a sense that that building, what is that, building 1? This one and that one are towering over them, because those are 3-story buildings. And so you add the extra 1/2 story that is submerged, it's quite a difference. But maybe it's not so bad because the sun sets that way, and so it's not going to affect the Colony Park. The management of Colony Park has been very, very good over the years. They're very responsive, and they really run a really nice apartment complex. And I am pleased to know that Colony Park management will supervise this new complex as well. I heard the exterior of the Colony Park is quite nice, and if you need any advice about the gutters, go to what's existing in Colony Park. Use that. Also on the elevation views where it showed the balconies with the railings, I think you're gonna need a covered railing, because that's what Colony Park has right now. And so, you know, it comes up, it's covered to about 3.5 feet high. And if you don't cover it, people are going to put things out there to cover it anyway. So, because they're going to keep things out there on their balcony. They're going to keep their bicycles and all that stuff. So, they'll put a cover on there. Also,
you have 30 seconds remaining.
Okay. You can't have any outside bicycle parking because people come through there rifling. And even though bicycles are stolen all the time in this neighborhood. You can't have any outside bicycle parking at all. And the other thing that I would consider is the trash. Cover the trash so that people can't go in through it, because that's what I hear is the biggest complaint from Colony Park residents.
That's your time, sir. Thank you.
At 3 a.m., transients.
Thank you for your comments.
I could go on for another 3 minutes easily, but I won't.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. I do have a few questions for staff. You may have to relay them to the applicant, but I've jotted some of the concerns down. When a traffic study has been completed for this project?
Not required for this project.
Not required, okay. The percentage of, there is a certain number of these units that are low income?
4 of the units will be low, or very low, I believe.
Okay, and the square footage of the units?
Of which units?
They range from 700 square feet to, call it roughly 1,200 square feet.
Okay. One of the public comments dealt with an existing concrete wall. Is that being removed or maintained?
I was unsure of that comment. The concrete wall that surrounds the property?
Apparently the comment was made concerning a concrete wall.
Yeah, the ones that surround, so the ones that are shown on the screen, yeah, that will be removed.
Okay. Dean, any other applicants have additional questions?
I do. How far away is the closest public transportation?
It is less than a half a mile on telephone. I think it's probably within 500 feet, to be honest.
On telephone right there at that?
On telephone and Portola.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff?
I do. The building that the gentleman was calling building number 1 is actually building number 5. Is that correct? The one that is going to be taller to the sunken area?
Correct, building number 5.
All right, thanks.
One additional question. Was there, as you were sort of laying out the building orientation and the site circulation, was there ever any consideration of putting a curb cut onto Thill, or was that problematic?
I think we had explored it early on, but right now I believe Thill's one way from that location, so.
Staff can chime in on that. There is a median in the middle of Thill. With other projects, they have explored doing access off Thill, and based on the current intersection at Goodman and Thill, placing any sort of additional cut through there was infeasible. In addition, there's another development proposed just down the way, the Broom property, which would make improvements along Thill as well. So through the transportation division, they have basically identified that that's not really an access point that would be suitable for the site.
Thank you. And one last small question again. I recalled from the applicant presentation that we had, you described that having a pedestrian access from the patios out to the sidewalk. It looks like that occurs everywhere except the building at the corner of Thill and Goodman. Was there any rationale for that? The ones that would go out
right
to
there.
Thill, yeah.
I think part of that is to deal with the grade. So where it's feasible that we have it. I think with Thill and Goodman, we also will have kind of a sign there. So that's partly the reason that that's not.
Thanks.
Okay. The public meeting is closed, and we're going to move into deliberation phase. Who would like to speak first? We can start off with concerns or things that you find favorable.
Well, I appreciate the frontages on the streets, and it does continue the style of architecture in the neighborhood, so I think that's rather successful, so I appreciate that. I guess, to me, the parking court is a parking court. I mean, I noticed on the elevations the patterning of the windows don't necessarily align with the garages, just, a separate kind of entity for the garage levels. And, there's just a lot of asphalt there. And I'm wondering and I appreciate the desire to have more parking, because I know complexes like this can fill up rather quickly. But I just wonder if there's more opportunity for larger planters, perhaps with more trees, to just break that up a little bit, particularly down the center, to separate one side from the other a little bit more. because it's really just a wall of garage doors along that base. Yeah, I mean, just the configuration of the units kind of requires that, so I don't see how to change that, but perhaps there are small areas you could capture more green space, more opportunity for that. Yeah, that's it for now.
For me, I agree. I think that the overall design, mass bulk scale of the project is in keeping with the neighborhood. I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunities that you've taken to make connections to the surrounding neighborhood and some of the amenities that are off-site. I do tend to agree that I think trying to study opportunities to have some larger open space, both passive and active open spaces on site would enhance the project. There were some areas of question for me about materials and what's anticipated, and I think I'd personally like to try to get some more information on those types of things. But overall, I think this is a great project, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into it to date.
William? Jack?
No, I will. Do you want?
Oh yeah, yeah, I have a few comments here. Yeah, I'd echo their comments. It is a great project. I can tell it's really fitting well with the neighborhood. Thank you for that. Just on the landscape, a few comments related to that, kind of more general stuff, and then some more kind of picky things based on some of the plantings I'm seeing. I think play for local residents, some kind of play structure or something for when there's kids, and the parents sometimes have to stay close to their residences for whatever reason. I think that might be an opportunity when you guys come back to rethinking of potentially how you could more tightly program that open space. I understand this is conceptual, and so these things evolve over time. I think from my experience, when you have a cistern underneath a parking area like that in the central area, that you can't put trees on that. So that might be then an opportunity if you did cover solar parking or whatever, that, yeah, you don't have to have trees there. Obviously, you have the solar. And then maybe, again, looking for more opportunities for more open space wherever you can find it. I think that's very desirable. Yeah, and then charging solar cars, that would also be part of that naturally, because so many residents, especially in apartments, they don't have enough solar charging opportunities, right? That's like a common, I have electric vehicles, so I can relate to that. On the plantings, I think, again, there's some moderate water-using species, and I think with our super drought that we're experiencing and will it ever let up? I don't know. That maybe some of these plants might want to rethink just going with all low water use. I'd say something here on the legend. This would probably be per the landscape architect. Maybe he's listening, but like the Arbutus marina, that is a much larger tree than the symbol is showing. They get 30, 40, even larger. Looks like a fairly small tree there. Just want to make sure that the scales that we're working are true to the actual size that the plant gets. I'm also saying generally it'd be nice to see more color, like at the corner areas and the entrances to the site. Right now I'm seeing a lot of greens and like grasses like carex, panza, and stuff like that, which is moderate use. Tends to run too, so you got to be aware of that. Might be better off with like carex, divulsa, or something of that nature. Also with the symbols, the colors are very bright in orange, which is great, but it would be nice to see the colors relating to the actual color of the flower on the plant, or the colors and texture. Just make it easier for me to read it as a landscape architect and for the community. That also, you have Quercus agrifolia, like at the corner there. I think the corners too, instead of maybe a shady canopy tree, that might be better served for a color flowering tree like a cercis, which you have here. You also just have one single pine tree here. Just kind of curious what was driving that one specimen Afghan. A lot of times that tree is used for screening. I guess it's okay as a specimen tree. And then again, that comment on screening all the AC units, especially that one pathway that I brought to your attention, I think that would be very important. I think overall the plant palette is pretty good. The choices of plants, I would maybe like to see a little more. It's fairly blocky right now, maybe a little bit more meandering, where the plants kind of start to phase in and out, I think would also kind of be beneficial to the overall design. I mean, that's not a requirement, that's just a suggestion. That's it.
Me go? Sure. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is address your question for the parking, and yes, reduce the parking. Because I think that's your only question, really, right? I really appreciate the siting of the project, and you have your opening, you face the street, and I think that's really, really important. And that's not happening everywhere around. Well, now it's not because it's a wall, but even on other projects, I think it's on Thill, so you guys like to say. That there's a wall along there. I really appreciate the fact that you guys turned it in there, and you do have eyes on the street. It is just garages on the interior, and I understand that that's what happens when you turn it around like that. So I appreciate that, but I think that you could remove some of the parking and have more an activated courtyard. And I agree 100% with everyone what has been said a few times, that it could be a solar farm on the solar collectors on the interior, make it all electric, and make the central courtyard more friendly for outdoor spaces and permeable. I think that every plant should be low to no water use, and I know no doesn't really work, but once established, you can pretty much go with no. But they should be very, very low water use. I think the 3 stories works as well. Even the single family across the way, it's 2.5 stories, because I think you walk up steps to get to it, and then it's 2 stories. So I think the scale works well. I think the materials are mostly pretty good. I really think that in these drawings and in your renderings, you should have the gutters, the downspouts, and you should know what the materials are for the decking materials. Those things matter to us. How they wear, what they'll be like in 10 years, what they'll be like when we're gone. How well will the vinyl windows wear? I really, really would like to discourage you using vinyl windows for a lot of reasons. I think that, but for the most part, I think the project's really well done, and I think it will make the neighborhood better than the empty lot. And the old house that was on there was clearly, it wasn't nothing, even though it was old. And the walls going away and having activated streets are great. So I think that's about it. I actually, personally, when someone makes a motion to approve it, I'm for it. Although I wouldn't mind seeing some of the stuff come back with more defined materials, or at least it should be defined for the admin to be able to see that and be able to make a judgment call on that, and have the thing, and have all materials called out for staff to see. Because this is actually, you guys we're giving recommendations for
the director's hearing, the hearing
right?
officer.
So this will go to a director's hearing.
Correct.
So what we recommend will be heard by director.
Correct. Your recommendations can be included as conditions of approval for the project, and/or requested to see and incorporated in the plans prior to director's hearing if needed.
Okay. I get it. Thank you.
I have one more suggestion. Can I make that?
Sure.
A comment. It's just enhanced paving at the entrance, just aprons at least.
So, please.
No, I'll wrap it up, but you have questions. Go ahead.
I was going to try to make a motion.
Well, I have questions, concerns. For the most part, I do agree with my colleagues, especially in the area of the courtyard. I would like to see at least a 4-inch recess on the windows. I don't believe we typically approve vinyl windows. It's not a quality material, and I think that's a concern for us. Typically, we'll see a fiberglass window in lieu of a vinyl window. If there's going to be gutters and downspouts, at the very least, maybe match what's adjacent in the Colony project. At least we'll have a better idea of what we're going to get. I think there's some merit in enclosing the balconies, because I know a lot of things wind up out there and it can become very unsightly, leaving them open. Covered parking and solar collection, I think, is another thing that I would like to see as part of the approval process. And maybe this is just kind of my own opinion, no one's mentioned it. I'd like to see a little bit more color variation in the buildings. They can pretty much be complementary to each other, but it's a little boring. I think a little variation could add to the aesthetics of the project. So I think my primary concerns are the vinyl windows and the lack of the recess of the windows and the courtyard in the center. More trees, less asphalt, more enhanced paving. I'd like to see that included in a motion.
If you want to make a motion, you can, but what project are you talking about where they have gutters and downspouts?
The Colony project next door.
Is it the blue one?
I believe it is.
I think it looks to me like they sheet flow off the building, which I would be okay with it sheet flowing off the building. I don't see that you need to have gutters and downspouts, but if you do, I think it should be shown. I mean, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see gutters and downspouts on the across the street. What I think is a single-family, 2.5-story building across the way.
Well, then we could always spell out we want to have metal versus PVC.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
and
hard to go to shape.
Is it actually in our purview to say that we? I mean, we can discourage vinyl windows, but is it really in our purview to say they can't use vinyl windows?
We typically have the last 6-7 years.
So it doesn't feel like it's in our purview. I can't stand it. I'd love to see it written into building code that you can't have them, but it isn't, and I personally don't think it's in our purview. And I'm going to disagree with with all due respect. I think the color palette, I'm good with the color palette. I think it's subtle, but it varies, and you vary when you're also varying. It's more than color for me. So it's you have horizontal. That's the back sides, right?
Of Colony Park.
Is someone showing that on
The
purpose?
existing. When talking about the
just up there.
downspouts.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, I thought you were showing it for a reason. So there you have the materialistic, the tactile really, because it's bumping in and out with the, I think it's a composite siding, and then you have the painted plasters. And so I think that the variation is subtle and it's okay. And for me personally, as I think the color works fairly well.
Okay, we need a motion then.
I'll try to make a motion. I would move to continue the project to the full board with comments. One being that the committee generally appreciates the overall mass bulk scale of the project, the building orientation, the overall color palette. The lighting of the project should be dark sky compliant, and a anticipated fixture style should be shown on the color and materials board. I would Recommend consideration of removing the 3 parking spaces near the connection to Colony Park and replacement of those spaces with additional open space and amenity spaces, including, for example, bike parking or a dog relief area or something along those lines. Recommend consideration of enhanced pavement at the entries. Recommend the windows to be recessed a minimum of 2 inches. To provide additional material and finish information for windows, railings, garages, doors, downspouts, etc. Consider enclosing the balconies. Study removing, take that one out, I don't believe that one. I would say study and show the accessible paths to trash enclosures, if those are anticipated to need to be accessible. I don't see the obvious path of travel currently, and that may affect how that central parking area lays out. To study opportunities for additional landscaping and open space generally throughout the site. To confirm that proposed landscaping at the underground storm drain chambers is feasible. And to, I know, Jack, you had a couple of recommendations for landscaping, and I didn't quite capture those, but if you wanted to try to offer some recommendations for the motion as well, I'd be happy to hear those.
Just one point of clarification for staff before we do that. You use the term continue. Is this a motion, when you say that, is that to continue it to a future DRC hearing, or are you comfortable with moving it forward? Okay, so bring it back to this hearing body.
Back to DRC.
Got it, thank you.
So Jack, you could amend his motion.
Yeah, I'd just like to amend or add to it. Is that the right terminology? Yeah, so as far as the landscaping, again, making sure it's all low water use plant material, that maybe reconsider that one single pine tree. Like you're mentioning, make sure we have cut sheets of the lighting that's going to be proposed, the bollards. I think you did mention that. You mentioned that the enhanced paving, and then with the landscaping, that to perhaps a little more color on the corners and entrances, kind of maybe rethinking the tree placement. It would be good to have a few more evergreen trees too, where you have parking, because we're often very hot here, even in the winter nowadays. And then just more flow with how the landscape is laid out, I think would be helpful. I'd add that to the motion.
I'm comfortable adding those to my motion, as well as please provide information on the plaster finish as well.
Okay, we need a second.
And if this is to continue, would this be to continue to a date uncertain, or?
I'm happy to schedule if you're comfortable.
And the applicant
during
can weigh in on how fast they think they can turn these materials around before we. So we are looking at having the next DRC meeting would be November 16th. That's a pretty quick turnaround for you guys with our deadlines and making staff report. So.
Will we get an actual,
we can give you a synopsis as far as what the recommendations were here. Sure.
So you can try to follow it.
And we can always continue it once more if not ready by that time, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're probably in a better position to make a call once we actually see those letters and share it with the rest of our design team.
Okay, the staff would just recommend continuing it to the November 16th hearing.
Okay. Curtis, you're comfortable with that as a second?
Yes.
Oh, Curtis, you seconded?
Yes. Okay. Okay, Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Okay, on the motion, Member Kiesel?
Yes.
Member Cormain?
Yes.
Member Tomasello?
Yes.
Vice Chair Grouden? Vice Chair Grouden?
Yes.
And Chair Antleman.
Yes.
5 ayes and the motion carries.
Not a big fan of it having to come back.
So that's our only item on the agenda at this point, so we're at staff
There-
communication.
There is one other item that was slated to be continued. It was noted on the agenda to be continued to the December 7th meeting. Since we are going to be having a November 16th meeting, we would ask that a motion be made to continue that item to the November 16th meeting instead.
Need a motion to continue the item till December 16th?
Thank you.
Someone?
To continue?
Yeah, someone.
Yeah, someone.
Okay, second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Okay, on the motion to continue item 2 to the November 16th meeting, Member Kiesel,
Yes.
Member Cormain,
Yes.
Member Tomasello,
Yes.
Vice Chair Groudon,
Yes.
and Chair Antleman.
Yes.
5 ayes and the motion carries.
Okay, I guess we're at staff communication now.
Sure. We were just going to let you know there's going to be a November 16th meeting. I think you're all aware now. That's all staff communication.
So can I ask staff something?
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of state bills affecting planning, DRC, all of us. Will we be addressing any of those? I think about it in this one because I know one of them is the reduction of parking.
Sure. So when you ask, do you mean specifically from project to project or just in general the contents of the bills?
No, in the past, not so much in DRC, but like when I was on Planning Commission, they would address things that really had an impact on us to be more informed for our judgments. And I think that it's important in why we're having, especially I think it's AB 209, whatever it is, that's addressing parking, and they're addressing the density and all the things that we've had in other meetings and we're probably going to be facing soon. I guess maybe it would be a suggestion to have, and I don't know if we can have an informal type of meeting like that where we get to learn.
Planning
what it
Commission
is.
also asked almost the exact same question our last hearing. Planning Commission.
Oh yeah.
There are a handful of new state laws that are coming down the pipeline effective January 1. Staff is doing their best to keep up, and we're in the process of working with city attorneys to get interpretations and really figure it out. Based on Planning Commission also requesting the same thing, we're looking into creating some sort of, dialogue about new upcoming state laws. But as I mentioned, we are just attempting to kind of dissect them ourselves. So keep it on the lookout. We're trying to get those, but we are short-staffed, so.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we could do some type of joint meeting or.
Yeah.
Definitely some kind of working session or something.
Working session, yeah.
We'll talk to the director and get something penciled in.
Okay, if there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned. Good motion.